everybody, it's me, MiaFran again. Welcome back to my channel and to another Fruits Basket review. So I'm really sorry I haven't put out a video for like the past 2 weeks. It's just been a little bit hectic for me and my schedule. Just been tired of my job, but you know, I'm getting used to it. And apologies for the air conditioner on in the background, but it's really hot and I don't want to be recording this video for very long with it being hot. So I'd rather just keep the air on in the background for this one video. As well, we're going to be doing 2 episodes in this one long-ass video, hopefully not too long. So we're going to be doing episodes 6 and 7 of Fruits Basket Season 3, so let's get right into it. So I'm just going to go over, like, little bitty synopsis of what happens in each episode, and then I will just give my commentary on it. So episode 6, entitled, It Was So Foolish, we learn, finally, that Toru has come to terms with her feelings and all these things that she has been feeling when it comes to Kyo. She finally admits that she's in love with Kyo, that she wants him, that he is what is most precious and important to her. Now, we also learn that Rin is finally okay. She is living with Kyo's master in his house. You know, he's got some vacant rooms. So she's staying there, you know, for her own safety and everything, away from Akito. Her hair is short now, and Toru goes to visit her, you know, just see how she's doing, because she hasn't seen her in a while. And she sees that Shigure is also there. And we kind of learn that Shigure basically is, again, still being really malicious and scheming, you know how he has been, how he is, as we all have seen in previous episodes, in previous seasons. But basically, Toru kind of reveals to both Rin and Shigure that she wants to break the curse and save Kyo. And Shigure kind of teases her and says, well, you know, Kyo is serving his purpose as the cat. He's going to be locked up, and there's nothing that we can do about it. And we're not going to try to do anything about it as other Zodiac members, because that's not what the plan is. It's not what we're destined to do. Kyo's his curse will break eventually, but he's still going to be trapped there. And Toru is kind of like basically hinting at him like, well, I don't want it to be eventual. I want to get the curse broken as soon as possible. You know, I want him to be okay. I want, you know, the curse to not weigh over him. And, you know, of course she doesn't want him to get locked up. And that's when Shigure kind of realizes, oh, well, you want to break the curse as soon as possible. Is it because you're in love with him? But before he can even say, like, finish his sentence, Toru, like, runs away. And that's also when Rin kind of realizes, oh my gosh, she's in love with Kyo? Like, wow, okay. I guess they're both a little bit shocked that someone would love the cat. But again, Toru's been an outsider this whole time. Like, she's kind of been brought into this world of the Somas. So, if anyone was going to fall in love with Kyo, it was definitely not going to be a member of the Soma family, besides Kagura. But again, we already know that she basically did that out of pity, because she felt bad for him, and it kind of went from an obsession to, you know, a crush. You know, she does love him, but it's not really for the right reasons, and she even knows that. And we learned that last season. But Toru runs away, and we get this big flashback of her remembering her mother and being very confused, because she's like, I remember when I spoke with Rin a previous time about what's most precious to me, and she's always said what's most precious to her is her mother, first and foremost. Because she doesn't remember her dad too much, if at all. And her mom was the one, you know, the number one thing in her life. When her mother died, she still made her number one, even though her mom's not physically there any longer. And, you know, a lot of people can relate to that. When you lose a parent or somebody very special to you, a sibling, whoever, a child, it's kind of like you still want to try to make that person number one to you in your life. And that's what Toru was doing, especially since she really didn't have anyone else. But now she's kind of scared to admit, but she does eventually admit that Kyo is who's most precious to her now. She wants Kyo, she wants him, not her mother. Her mother's gone. She needs to kind of move on with her life and find somebody precious to her that she can spend time with and be with. And, you know, of course, you know, her mother's her mother. She is going to remember her always, but you know, she needs that love and affection from someone physically and emotionally. And of course, you know, emotionally her mother, she knows her mother loves her and everything, but it's not a romantic love. It's not like with how she feels with Kyo. So it kind of takes her a little while to kind of admit that. And then it's the anniversary of her mother's death, so they're gonna go to the cemetery to go visit her mother. And Kyo goes to the cemetery because we learn in this episode. I can't remember if we learned it in previous seasons or not. I think we did. But Kyo knew Toru's mom. He talked to her a lot as a child. And we get these flashbacks of her mom talking about Toru to Kyo and telling him, like, oh, she's so cute. She's, like, a really great kid. You know, you guys will be really good friends. And he even talks about how one time he watched Toru when they were little. Like, he kind of peeked through the window and watched her when her mom wasn't there. And he kind of, like, actually saw her for how she was. Because when he goes to the cemetery to visit her mother's grave, her grandfather is there. And her grandfather recognizes Kyo and is like, oh, you're one of the boys that she's living with. And he basically kind of talks about how Toru isn't really herself when she's around other people. When she was little, her father passed away. So people at the funeral, like members of her own family, her grandfather, he's like, you know, it was awful. They were so cruel to her. They were saying all these things in front of a child because, you know, adults think kids are stupid and they don't understand things. And kids can be dumb, obviously. You know, kids aren't born 100% knowing everything about the world and how the world works. But, I mean, you know, when you talk shit in front of a kid, they're gonna, like, understand if you're talking crap about them in front of them as an adult. Like, you don't do that. But her grandfather talks about how she was, you know, getting basically trash talked by all these members of their family, these adults. And, you know, like, oh, poor Kyoko, that's her mother's name. What's she gonna do? How is she gonna live without her husband? And it's the child's fault somehow. Like, just saying just terrible, awful things. So Toru decides that she's going to be like her dad for her mother. Because her mother is so upset and distraught about her father dying and stuff. So Toru kind of adopts the way that her dad used to speak, the mannerisms. She kind of remembers how he would greet her mother when she would come home from work. So Toru starts greeting her mother in a way that her dad used to greet her when she would come home, you know, like, hey, how are you? How was your day? You know, she asks the same questions probably in the same cadence, in the same intonation of her voice that her dad would sound like. And it just became like a routine. It's like a mask that she's wearing. It's not really her, that's her father. But she does say, like, oh yeah, a lot of people say I sound like my dad. She says that later to Kyo. And basically, Kyo kind of realizes, like, that's not Toru, that's her putting on this mask for her mom. Even though her mom, you know, knew what kind of kid she was and everything, she said she is an awesome kid, she's an awesome person. But she kind of felt to, like, kind of hide behind this other person's personality or their mannerisms or the way they were, just because she didn't want her mother to leave. Like, she didn't want her mom to kind of get lost in not having her father around. More like an emotional kind of way, not really a physical way. Like, they didn't know. Obviously, they had no idea her mother was gonna, you know, die in an accident or anything, but she just wanted her mom to be happy and stay, and that was for her. That was when her mom was the most precious person in her life. So Kyo kind of learns that information. Like, he knows that that's not who the real Toru is. You know, he just wants her to be herself, be who she really is. So he kind of confronts her later on. But before Kyo and Toru do have their conversation, Toru does go visit Rin again to apologize for running away, you know, the other day before that. And Kagura is also there, and she's basically like, you know, Toru, because Kagura knows that Toru's in love with Kyo. She basically tells her You know, if you don't tell Kyo how you actually feel about him, you know, we're gonna have some problems. There's gonna be some trouble. So you need to tell him. So she slaps Toru, basically just slaps some sense into her. And Toru is like, you know what? You're right. I should probably tell him eventually. So, you know, Kagura kind of becomes the driving force. Even though Kagura is also in love with Kyo, she knows that he doesn't love her. So she's going to do the next best thing and make sure that the person that he does love knows that he loves her and that she loves him back. So, okay, we're back to the confrontation. It's not really a confrontation. It's more just a conversation between Toru and Kyo in between a sheet that's hanging up to dry. So, you know, they don't really see each other's faces. But this part was in the trailer for season 3. Like this moment between them. But he basically asks her, like, oh, what did your dad look like? You know, when, like, do you remember? And Toru's kind of like, oh, I don't really remember. They said he was a handsome guy. Apparently her dad is supposed to look a lot like Kureno. That's what they say in the manga. So I guess if you want to kind of try to figure out what her dad looked like, kind of looked like Kureno. Because, again, Kureno is a lot like Toru. Or Toru is a lot like Kureno. They, you know, they've said that before. Their personalities, the way they are, is very similar. But anyway, she basically says, well, they say I sound like my dad. I act like him, you know. I say similar things to him. And Kyo basically says, like, you know, you don't have to do that. You can be yourself. You know, you should be how you want to be. And she kind of, like, realizes that as well. And that's really kind of where, like, episode 6 ends. So we're gonna go on to episode 7. Just the last scene in episode 6. Basically, Toru is gonna start to tell Kyo how she feels, but they both kind of freak out a little bit. Because Toru kind of realizes, like, oh, my mom is gone. Like, she feels like the memory of her mother is gone, basically. A symbolic kind of way. Where the picture of her mother, she shows Kyo the picture of her dad. And she keeps in the picture frame, like, behind the picture of her mom. She shows it to him, and she sees that she notices, or at least in her mind, the picture with her mother, like, her mother's gone out of the picture. And then Kyo kind of gets this, like, memory or flashback in his head. Or at least, like, he kind of gets this idea in his head of Kyoko saying, I won't forgive you. So he's kind of like, oh shit, like, what's happening? But we go into episode 7, which is entitled... That's right, it's empty. So this episode really focuses on the relationship between Akira, which is Akito's father, and Ren, Akito's mother. So we kind of learn what's in the box that Akito has. So we basically start off with Shigure walking, you know, along the hallway, I guess, in the Soma estate. He's stopped by Ren. She brings him into her room, and they have a conversation. She talks about how she met Akira, Akito's father. He was the previous head of the family, and he was basically destined or prophesized. Basically, he wasn't going to live very long. He was going to die at a young age, and they needed an heir. And Ren basically kind of, I guess she really kind of thrust herself upon Akira, as we can see. Like, she told him, like, you know, nobody understands you more than I do. She was like a servant in the household. And she basically tells him, you know, oh, well, I understand you the most. I love you. Out of everyone here, I'm the one that should be here with you. You need someone by your side until, you know, you die, and it should be me because I love you. So they fall in love, basically. They have a beautiful love story, according to Ren. The other maids in the house aren't very happy about it, especially that old lady maid, that old bitch that's always around making annoying commentary. Y'all know which one I'm talking about. And I don't even know this bitch's name. But anyway, that's not important. So then, of course, Ren talks about how, well, it was a really great relationship, and then I had to get pregnant And she basically talks about how, you know, at that point I wasn't the woman that he loved the most, because Akito was born female and she was born a special child. They keep repeating the phrase "a special child" to describe Akito. Like, her father used that a lot. And, you know, of course, Ren is like, you shouldn't want to have a relationship with Akito because she wanted Akira all to herself. And of course, after having a daughter, that's not gonna happen. So it was actually Ren's idea to raise Akito as male and not female, because she thought that having a female heir would just cause trouble, specifically for her, because everyone's already like doting on her and spending putting all their attention on her, because she is God, basically. And, you know, Ren didn't like that. And we kind of do some flashbacks as well to the 4 oldest Zodiac members. So we've got Shigure, Hattori, Ayame, and Kureno. And, you know, they're talking about how when they're kids at this point, or at least like preteens, I guess. I got like kids, preteens, prepubescent. They're just basically talking about, like, you know, what's been going on and stuff. But it's interesting to hear and see that, like, even they knew what was going on, because they all know that Akito is female. And so basically, like, the whole time they were having their conversation, I'm like, damn, young Shigure is probably like, and in a few years I'ma tap that, talking about Ren, because he did sleep with her. As we've seen in previous episodes, they did sleep together once. So again, ultimate your mom joke, I guess. But we see when Akira died, passed away, Akito was there. She was like a little kid. And Ren comes in the room. He's already dead, and she's like, "Why did nobody call me? What's happening?" And the old maid bitch is like, "There was no time to call you. It happened suddenly. Like, you know, you shouldn't even be in here, blah, blah, blah." Like, they're all causing problems for each other. Like, the whole, like, immediate family of, like, Akito and her parents and stuff, they all kind of, like, mess with each other's heads. They're all very, I don't want to say, like, mentally unstable, but it's very apparent that it's, like, they all kind of mess with each other's heads and well-beings and stuff. It's just not a good environment. And Ren just says all these terrible, awful things to Akito. Like, you know, you're gonna see that the people that were born to love you, like, they don't really love you. They're not really gonna love you, and they're all gonna leave you. And then nobody's going to love you, because in the end, nobody's going to want you anymore. You're useless. And, you know, Akito's clearly affected by that, as she comments later on in the episode. So then, you know, we're back to Ren and Shigure, and Ren is like, you know, "I know you want me, Shigure. You have that, like, lustful look in your eyes." He's like, "Yeah, I do feel affection for you, but I probably would feel more affection when I think about what Akito would be like if she had been raised female." Like, he basically said, like, she'd probably be even more amazing than you, I guess, as a woman. I don't know. He's just basically just telling Ren to, you know, go away. Like, you know, like, your daughter is better than you, or she's hotter than you. I don't know. You know, it's Shigure. He's just being a little tease. But he walks away from her. She's, like, screaming at him. Excuse me. She's screaming at him, like, you know, "Screw you," whatever. And then we see that Akito is awake. She's been awake for a while. It's raining like this entire episode. It's raining outside the whole time. So, you know, doom and gloom all over the place. And she's holding this box that was given to her after her father died, and, you know, the old lady maid or whatever tells Akito, like, "Oh, it's your father's soul is in there, so, you know, he's always going to be with you." And even Akito makes the comment, like, "Oh, he didn't love me the most. He loved her mother." And the old lady maid's like, "No, he loved you the most." Well, whatever. So they're already just feeding all this, you know, all of these very heavy statements into everyone's head, specifically Akito. So, like, obviously you could tell this is why she's so messed up. I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because her mother is crazy, and so is she. But basically, Ren comes with a knife, storming into the room. She's basically gonna stab Akito, because she wants the box. She's been wanting the box this whole time. Akito basically is like, here, you know what? You can have the box, bitch. Throws it. There's nothing in the box. It's empty. Nothing is in there. I thought it was going to be the ashes because I couldn't remember what was in the box or not. It's nothing. And of course Ren is like disappointed because it's like, I thought he was in the box. Like, she wants to be with Akira. She misses him. I guess she's so delusional. She's so blinded by her like love for her husband. So yeah. But Akito leaves the room. Kureno goes after her. She basically like is upset and cries and is like, you know what, all this information that was fed to me, it's like it doesn't mean anything, like everyone's gonna leave. And actually, before she tries to stab her mother, we see one of the bonds is broken. Hiro's bond is broken. It just kind of happened, and we see that it's true because his little sister is right there. He picks her up and he doesn't turn into a sheep, and his mother comes in and she's like, oh my gosh, it's broken. And he's crying because he doesn't know how to feel, and his mother's like, you know what, it's okay, you've lived this way your whole life and now it's just suddenly changed and you don't know how to feel, you know, it's like this connection, this loss of connection. So they're crying, you know, it's a happy thing, but it's also very scary. You know, Hiro doesn't know how to feel about it. So and I actually made an error in the last episode that I posted. I said there was 10 to go after the first. It was actually 10 to go now because I forgot to count Kyo in the number of curses because he's also still cursed. And he's not part of the zodiac, but he's still cursed. So 3 down, 10 to go because we have 12 plus 1, so 13. So we've got 10 more curses that need to be broken. So we've got Kureno, Momiji, and Hiro out of the curse. But anyway, so we have that. And then we've got this conversation between Kureno and Akito. They're outside. Again, it's raining. And Kureno just basically kind of holds her and says, you know what? We can just start over. Let's just forget everything. And, you know, we'll make sure everything is right. You know, it's not too late to start over. We can try to make amends with, you know, everything going on. And Akito's like, it's too late. Like, why didn't you say this back then when your curse broke? She basically tells him, like, you kind of messed everything up. You screwed up when you didn't leave. If you had left, then, like, things wouldn't be as crazy as they are. You know, you staying with me didn't save me. It kind of made things worse. And so then she stabs him, which you know, this was a moment that I've been dreading and readying myself for a long time. Because I remember when it happened in the manga, and I was just like, oh my god. But then we see, outside of Uo-chan's, one of her jobs, there's a dead bird outside in the rain. Because, of course, she stabbed him pretty good. Like, that knife went real deep. And he basically, like, is falling over, and this maid is like, oh my god, Kureno, you're bleeding, what happened? And he's like, don't worry about me, go get Akito, because she runs away. So, you know, we're left on a cliffhanger, basically. But in terms of all the stuff that happened in these 2 episodes, I mean, we're getting down to the wire in terms of the emotional moments, and curses are breaking, and we're finally learning about why characters are the way that they are. Specifically Akito, Shigure, the reason why Kureno is the way he is. And, you know, we're getting to a point where Kyo and Toru have to admit their feelings to each other. Or at least Toru has to admit her feelings to Kyo, because at this point, you know, it's kind of seeming like he's not really going to say anything to her. He's just going to accept his fate. And at the very end of this episode as well, we see Toru kind of stop Kyo because he's like, oh, I'm gonna step out for a bit, even though it's raining. and she's kind of like, wait, I just need to talk to you for a minute. He turns around and that's where the episode ends. So next episode we're more than likely going to get that conversation. And for you guys who have never read the manga, if you are very heavily shipping Torukyo, I recommend you get your biggest box of tissues out, because I think you are going to need it. You're going to be crying. It's going to get very emotional very fast. So, in terms of the way the episodes were, I think the pacing is really good so far in season 3. You know, nothing's too fast, nothing's too slow. It's a very good rate of information that we're getting that, you know, calls back to previous seasons. We're getting, you know, chunks of backstory rather well paced, as we've been seeing, especially for characters like Akito and Ren and Shikure, and then, you know, the relationship between certain characters. It's interesting to see the different callbacks. It's interesting to see younger versions of all these characters. I like that we got to see the relationship between Akira and Ren and see how that kind of turned out, how that happened, how they made Akito into who she is now, and all these influences of different characters and how they affect the others around them. You know, very good storytelling, good character development, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see just the visuals of the manga and how it's gonna translate from paper to animation and everything. And, you know, it's getting good. We're getting there. We're gonna be on episode 8. Like, it feels like we're already almost over, and we're not, but sooner or later we're gonna be on episode 24 of season 3, and, you know, we're not gonna know what to do with ourselves. But I really appreciate you guys listening and always watching. Again, I apologize for not posting a video last week for the review, but it's just been a crazy time getting used to my new part-time job. But you know, I do want to make sure that I do make more videos for you guys, and if you like what you see, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you already haven't, and check out all my links in the description. I have various social medias you can find me at: Twitter, Twitch. I stream when I can. I started a new game of Final Fantasy 15, so I hope you guys check that out on my channel as well, on my Twitch. I have a TikTok that you guys can check out, and I also have a Patreon, so if you want to support my future streaming and YouTube endeavors, you're more than welcome to go ahead and check out my Patreon, look at my tier list, and, you know, sign up for as little as $1 a month. That's going to get you some real good perks. So if you like seeing these names on screen here and you want your name to be one of them, go ahead and check out my Patreon. So shout out to both Anime Palooza and Elizabeth for being the best patrons ever. And have fun, stay safe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!